Well, hello, this is Rudy Giuliani, and this is America's Mayor Live. And this is live from Palm Beach. Um, so we're going to begin. I'm going to begin tonight by showing somebody very special. Okay, I'm going to show you my friend here. I made a friend of him. Okay, you see that? You want to show him Kimi? That is Kimi. Kimi is a policeman. 971. You see his 971? 97. See that? 971? Okay. Here's Kimi. There's Kimi. Hello, Kimi. So Kimi is a police dog, and I'm going to put it up. You see the little badge down there, right? Right? See the badge? All right. You wish you had a badge like that. Kimi, Kimi. Kimi is a dog, and he's not a police dog in the traditional sense that we think of. He helps the Queens District Attorney calm people down when they've been the victim. They're going to have to testify, or they are going to be witnesses. He'll sit with them, and apparently, if he's with you, he has been trained to calm you down. Walsh could have used him the other night, huh? He's so nervous. He could have used like a hug or something to help him, pills or whatever, something. But in any event, and the reason I like Kimi so much is I had a lab, looked a lot like that name. There were times in which I had him all during the 8 years I was mayor, maybe 2 months short, because we got him after 2 months of being mayor. And there were times in which he was my only friend. I got to tell you, being mayor, Mayor Adams has a lot of problems, and I don't know. I'm not going to make. It's a tough job. Tougher than, for example, being president is on Biden, who spends it all at the beach, and Harris, who spends it all going around to fancy parties with the first gentleman. The first gentleman. We'll go into that too. They're going to have another name for him. Well, he's not going to be the first gentleman. He's going to be the second gentleman, and that'll end in November. But I'm sorry, well, it'll end in November effectively, but it'll end in January. But I think even for the short term, gentleman's got to be taken away. I think it should have been taken away when we found out he knocked up his nanny, and they lied about that, covered it up when they ran for president the first time. And then you have these jackasses like Rachel Madcow and Sacky Packy, Little Red Lying Hood, naming him the personification of masculinity. I don't know. We'll take a look at that too in a little while. But one of the things that is not focused on as much, because that attack by the Iranians was thwarted by a nuclear defense that would not have been available had Joe Biden had his way. And it was available and did. The nastiest critic of that system when he was in the Senate, and it was helpful that he was the vocal one on it because he was always considered the dumbest man in the Senate, was Joe Biden. If it were up to Joe Biden, there would be no Iron Dome. There would be no third, fourth level defense systems. He didn't believe in them. It's like he doesn't believe in Taft-Hartley. So we're going to have a massive strike that cripples us. I mean, it should cripple his chances and her chances because she agrees with him. And they've already sided with the union. So how do you negotiate something like that? What kind of executive doesn't realize in order to negotiate, you got to keep some kind of neutrality? Well, and in addition to the 200, 300 missiles, Israel which because the Iron Dome and the other systems were effective, President Jerkoff says that they shouldn't be attacking the nuclear facilities. That's exactly what they should be doing. So listen to Gates. He's been wrong about foreign policy. Let's go back to the 80s when nuclear defense started. If you had listened to Biden, a lot of Israelis would be dead now. You listen to a sensible, intelligent man like Ronald Reagan with common sense, and we save a lot of lives. Once again, listen to Biden, and we're going to have a nuclear Iran, and who knows what the hell's going to happen. He's already killed so many people. Isn't it a good thing to do what Ronald Reagan used to say when he was asked about the New York Times? He was asked, "Do you read the New York?" I read it every day, and I pay attention to it. And I do exactly the opposite. I used to say the same thing to them when I was mayor. It was true. Just do the opposite of what Biden decides. It'll turn out to be right. Don't withdraw from Afghanistan the way you did. All these people will be alive. Go knock out the nuclear facilities. They won't be nuclear. They won't have a chance to create a complete conflagration in the Middle East. I mean, they're homicidal maniacs. They're right behind China as the biggest murderers of their own people. Not the Iranians. The Iranians are good people. The Iranians are a better situation than the Palestinians, where you don't have a counter movement. The Iranians have a big counter movement. In addition to the bombs, however, there also was a terrorist attack in Jaffa that killed. My goodness, what was it? 9 people, right? And wounded a whole bunch of other people. And this wonderful mom, Inbar Segev Vigdar, who had saved his life as a result of that. And that's another reason why that's another reason why Israel has to respond. That's her. That. If you take a look there, Ted, that comes from the Post. That's the hero mom with a little baby who she saved. He's 9 months old. His name is Ari. She saved his life. It was 7 that died. She and 6 others, and then the 2 Palestinian terrorists were were killed by a kind of a civilian who, of course, is trained and has a position with the IDF, but he used his handgun to put him away, and therefore they couldn't do any more damage. Lev Kreitman, who was a reservist in the IDF, was sitting nearby when he saw it. And by the way, he was a survivor of the Nova Music Festival on October 7, and he was and he shot at them, and it is thought that he got a few of them. He just kind of jumped into it. It kind of gives you an idea of how having guns can help, huh? Now, a lot of people in Israel, well, up until now, a lot of people in Israel didn't carry guns, and they've changed their minds about it. He was there. It took a while for the IDF to get there, so he is the one who at least got one of them, possibly both. Mr. Kreitman is quite a hero, but it does make the case that guns in the hands of innocent people can save lives, and that the stupid comment the other night, basically the guns can operate all by themselves by Tampon Tim, is absolutely untrue. And of course, it wasn't corrected. Although there is one exception to that, and that is Alec Baldwin, who didn't pull the trigger. It just went off. But that, of course, is a Democrat defense. You're entitled to that defense if you're a Democrat. I didn't pull the trigger. It just, how do I know how it went off? I didn't pull it. It must have been a feather, or maybe a bird got in, or maybe some evil spirit. But it wasn't me. I'm a Democrat. I was going to leave the country when Bush was elected, but I lied about that. Why don't these guys stick to acting? He's not a half bad actor. In fact, he's a good actor. Before he started acting like a moron, I used to enjoy. I mean, Hunt for the Red October is one of the best movies ever made, and he acted terrific in it. And on Saturday Night Live, he can be funny. But boy, he got crazy ideas, and they're not very well educated ideas. I don't know if these people really read, or I mean, it's not as if they have experience with any of these things. Well, the terror attack, now we're waiting to see. We're really waiting to see if Bibi listens to Biden, who went behind his back, hasn't talked to him yet, went to the G7, lined them up against Bibi, and now if Bibi takes out the nuclear facilities, he will be defying all of the European whatevers, and doing the biggest favor for them that ever was done by anyone, by taking nuclear weapons out of the hands of a madman. Something wrong with that picture, right? Now, he is dramatically failing. She and Harris are dramatically failing. I mean, she backs him up on all. She says, no, no, don't take out the nuclear facilities either. I mean, she may even be worse on these things, because I think, to the extent that her intellect allows her to be, I think she's more of a committed socialist, leftist, and Marxist. Uh, she's true to her values. So we know her values from the time that she was AG, and what the hell else was she? District attorney. And her values were to fund the police. Her values were paying for transgender surgery for prisoners. Her values were to get rid of immigration enforcement altogether. It was to end any form of deportation. They were values only that could be held by a Marxist who wants to destroy America. And, consistent with a group of others, particularly from California. She certainly played her role in destroying the city of San Francisco. And as far as we can tell, as vice president, played her role in destroying America. Whether she was the border czar or involved in the underlying causes of the border situation, she was a dramatic, unbelievable, world-class failure. She had one governmental job, really, which was to see if we can control this border thing, and it's probably one of the worst demonstrations of government misdirection, mistakes ever, with the biggest invasion ever. I want you to think about this. Easily, there are about 15 million people that came in as she was working on the underlying causes. That's more people than came through Ellis Island. She got us a whole Ellis Island plus, and we don't know who they are. At least the people at Ellis Island, we knew who they were. Some of them we have information about, can't tell if it's true or not. A lot of them couldn't be vetted at all because the countries don't cooperate with us in vetting them. Why we take them if the countries don't cooperate in vetting, I don't know, but we do. And we took them in numbers that dwarf any other president. You can't even, it's ridiculous to compare them to Trump. You can't compare them to Obama or Bush or Clinton or Reagan or Bush. These, the first year he was president and she was vice president, they set a record for the most illegal immigration. The second year, they exceeded that record. The third year, they exceeded that record. This year, it's going to be down a little. It's going to be 1.7 million, which would have been a record if they hadn't set one already. So altogether, we can count on the books about 8 to 10 million with the gotaways that are registered. Then we got to always think about the ones we didn't see that are estimated at 50 to 200% of the ones that we do see. So I'm giving them the benefit of the lowest number, which would be about 5 million. So that puts you at about 15 million. That 5 million, we have no idea who they are. They could be the nicest people in the world. They could be the biggest criminals and the biggest perverts and the killers and rapists and terrorists, and we wouldn't know the difference. With regard to the gotaways, same thing. We have no idea about that 2 million, who the hell they are. And with regard to the ones that we vetted, a lot of them have turned out now to be more terrorists than we've ever let in the history of this country, more criminals than we've ever let in the history of this country. Those are the ones that we vetted. There's at least 50% of that number that we didn't see. What do you think they are? The ones who come in and evade any kind of detection. Let's see if we can exercise something they don't have, common sense. Wouldn't it make sense to you they'd be the most dangerous? Those are the ones that this is not a wide open border. It is on our side, not on their side. On their side, it is patrolled and controlled by the Mexican cartels, and they make money on it. And the big money is who they can get in without any detection, because that's how you can bring in, without fear of confiscation, massive amounts of fentanyl. So we're doing everything we can to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory in Israel. We're doing everything. We did it with Gaza from the very beginning. After 2 days, ceasefire, 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 ceasefire. Before Bibi even invaded Gaza, they wanted a ceasefire. They made it very, very difficult, but he cleaned up. He did a good job of cleaning up Hamas, and he's continuing to do it and basically not paying attention to them. And now he's got an equally difficult problem. This is his opportunity to clean up the situation north of him that has been a tremendous peril for a long time. And since he's already pissed off Biden, what does he care? Piss him off again. And nobody else listens to him. Why should you listen to him? Putin doesn't listen to him. Nobody else listens to him. His wife doesn't even listen to him. I don't know if you saw that video we had where he came over to the reporters, and she just like walked right past him. Like, I'm finished with you, pal. Well, he's screwing up the Ukraine in just about the same way. So we'll take a short break, and we'll come back, and we'll take a look at what's going on in the Ukraine, where the Russians are beginning to pound them pretty badly. Delivers on its promise to do good and never forget the sacrifices America's greatest heroes have made for us. Heroes who risked their lives to keep our communities and our country safe. Heroes like United States Marine Corps Captain and pilot John Jeremy Sachs. Captain Sachs sustained fatal injuries when his military aircraft crashed during training, killing him and 5 other service members. He's remembered by loved ones as courageous, brilliant, and devoted to his career, family, and friends. John is survived by his wife, Amber, who gave birth to their second daughter 3 months after his death. Tunnels to Towers paid the mortgage on the family home for Amber and their 2 daughters. The foundation has helped over 1,000 military and first responder families navigate the worst of times by removing the burden of a mortgage payment. Our nation's heroes and their families need your help now more than ever. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org. T2T.org. That's T, the number 2T.org. T2T.org. Please donate now.
Welcome back.
Welcome back to America's Mayor Live. Well, if we turn our attention to Ukraine, I would have to say that Russia is making gains. They have taken back a city that they've been trying to get back for quite some time, Volodar. Volodar is in that region right over the border that begins the land bridge to Crimea, which they have successfully created for themselves. And it's a city that the Ukrainians had held quite successfully, and that just fell to the Russians. They had over 10,000 residents, and in recent days, they pounded it with glide bombs that Ukraine has no means to counter. It lies about 20 miles from Russia. And now they're moving toward two other eastern cities that are on high ground. They're moving toward Chasiv Yar and Toretsk. And what they're really trying to do, I would say, is grab territory so they have some extra trading territory when it gets to the inevitable, which is that they're going to have to trade territory. First of all, Biden is not allowing them to win. The only way they can win is if they hit Russia hard. Now, the strike that crooked Zelensky, who is crooked, covering up massive criminality at the highest levels of his government and ours, and using it, I'm sure, to his advantage. And also, I wouldn't trust at all that money is being used all for the purpose for which it's intended. It'd be the first time in the history of modern Ukraine that happened. And he's left all the crooked oligarchs in place, and he hasn't prosecuted some of the worst ones that he knows about. But in any event, what he wants to do, what the plan that he outlined for Nitwit was, he doesn't have to attack Moscow, the civilian population, which of course would likely start at least a limited nuclear war. But he can take out their electrical system. So in other words, he can black out Moscow. He can hit their electrical system, he can hit their munitions places, but he won't hit the civilian population. Now, I want you to calculate, because you can play Secretary of State, because we don't have one. Stinking Blinken is another communist, and also a massive, massive scoundrel. The guy responsible for the 51 lies, spies who lie, who I have personal animosity about, because they defamed me and painted me as a Russian operative for 17 months, which the newspapers didn't do anything to cure. And then when it got fixed, they certainly never apologized. It's a hell of a thing when you spend your life fighting communism to be described as a Russian, whatever the hell I was described as. Look, it didn't bother me, but it cost me. I mean, it's one of the things that cost me not only my law license, which they did a good job with the crooked bar associations that are part of the left woke establishment. And in the case of Washington, they're part of the deep state. They're some of the biggest bloodsuckers in the world are the lawyers in Washington. Bloodsuckers from your government. But in any event, The reality is that th- they if they took out the power to the capital of Russia, do you know what Putin would do? I don't know what he would do. And yeah, and as we in a discussion that we've had with Donald Trump, in the world that we live in of nuclear weapons, you got to be sure. Putin was sure when he went into Ukraine, and I'll tell you why he was sure. I saw it, and I could. I mean, I can. I understand. I understand the guy. I understand murderers and clever ones. He had every reason from the time, even before Biden completely double crossed his own people in Afghanistan and got them killed and left men on the field and all kinds of people die, and the 13 soldiers that died where he was looking at his watch. And before he did all that, I could have told you he would not respond if Putin went into Ukraine. The man is a total coward. He's afraid of his own shadow, completely corrupt. But Putin didn't count on that because maybe there was a 5 or 10% chance that he would. So Putin watched Afghanistan. That probably got him to a point where he said, "Hey, this guy's not going to do shit," and he started massing his forces to the north and to the east of Ukraine. But he didn't go right in. If you want to go back and look at that, he did what I noticed immediately. He started challenging him, and Nitwit, of course, who doesn't know how to negotiate anything, started saying every time Putin would say anything that suggested they're going to invade, he would say, don't, but no boots on the ground, no boots on the ground, no boots on the ground. He must have said no boots on the ground 50 times. And Putin, I'm sure, wrote it down each time, no boots on the ground. Let this guy just grovel in front of me first. Let me reduce him to a groveling little shit, which is what he did. And then he got him to say, if it's a small invasion, he might not do anything. And that had to be, okay, now I got a 99% chance, probably 100%. And he went in and we did nothing. Zero, nothing. Once Putin got the land bridge, it was over. All the rest of it is just getting people killed for nothing. Because the only way to dislodge them, you can't dislodge them from Ukraine without destroying Ukraine. You'd have to bomb the living daylights out of your own cities. You got to bomb them. You got to make them pay the way they made you pay. But they have nuclear weapons and you don't. So if you make them, I mean, suppose they were to bomb the hell out of every city between Ukraine and Moscow. You don't think he would start using his nuclear weapons against them? And I believe there is a reasonable chance that if they were to do something as aggressive as taking out their electrical system, their power systems, uh, doing the kind of damage that they think would mean that Russia would be willing to withdraw from Ukraine. But that kind of damage would not provoke the use of at least short range or medium range nuclear missiles. I think the chances are that Putin would use them. I don't know that you'd ever know the answer to that unless you tried it. Then you got to say to yourself, is it worth trying? Is it worth taking out the power of Moscow on the theory that that will have them begging for peace, on the chance that instead of begging for peace, they obliterate Kiev? What do you think, Ted? First of all, it's beyond question that the answer to that is Biden ain't going to let him do it. And it might be the one thing where he's right, because that might get us into a nuclear war. Also, I'm not sure they can do that. I'm not sure they could take out all those facilities that they want to take out without our help. And I'm not sure that Putin, I'm not sure that Putin would let us off the hook on that. So you got yourself in a situation where, at least right now, Biden tells Zelensky you can't attack Moscow in any kind of serious way, or Russia. If you don't attack Russia, you can't win. So now what are you fighting for? Just to get people killed, or just to divide money? A bunch among two governments, two regimes that are crooked as hell and have no regard for human life. That includes Biden. He has no regard for human life. Wouldn't get that many people killed if he did.
It's bizarre how.
So tell us what we're looking at.
So what you have on screen here, that's the city of. Let me make sure I pronounce this. Vuhledar.
Vuhledar, yes.
And Russia has recently retaken control of this strategically important location. The town of Vuhledar in Ukraine's Donetsk region. The Ukrainian military is reporting that Russia now has full control. Pro-Russian military bloggers reported early on Wednesday that the strategic town had fallen, delivering a blow to Ukraine's forces in the east of the country. Russia has paid a high cost in order to take back this town.
Want me to show them on a map where it is?
Yes, let's bring that up.
So, Vuhledar, if you want me to, I will draw for you. Let's see if I can do it on this. I've got to move this. I'm going to move this right now.
Yep.
To where I can draw on it. But while we do that, let me explain that this situation has been like this almost from the beginning. There's been relatively little movement. When we say there's been a victory on the part of Ukraine, it means they've taken a city like Vuhledar back. And then when we say, when you say that there's been a victory for Russia, then they've taken Vuhledar back. So they're trading cities. Meanwhile, I don't know how many people, I've seen estimates of 1 million people have died. I don't believe it's 1 million people. I can't have a hard time believing that it's 1 million people. But it's a lot of people, that's for sure, right? We know that. We know that it's a lot of people. So there is Ukraine. Now, if we
keep it in the middle there, yeah.
Keep it right in the middle, right there. Okay. Now, the purpose of this, the immediate purpose of this invasion, when they went in, was, it might have been to take all of Ukraine. That's possible. Possible it wasn't. There was a definite objective that we knew about, and what that objective was to create a land bridge, a consecutive land bridge from Russia to Crimea. So Crimea is here, right down there. That's Crimea. Now, Crimea is what they took under feckless, useless, cowardly, and communist-oriented, Islamic-oriented Obama, without any opposition, without anything. He didn't even give Ukraine weapons to fire against them. And Biden has given them weapons so late that they've had very little effect. Now, that's not made up by me. That's even the Europeans have said that. So they had some of those cities in between, like Donetsk, but they didn't have a continuous method of getting there. So what they did over a period of a few months, really, and then the war has been in a stalemate since then, is here's Russia, right there, right there. That's Russia. So they this is a roughly the case. They took that. Remember Kherson? Big battle for Kherson. Uh, Donetsk, not much of a battle. Mariupol, big battle for Mariupol right here. Big battle for Kherson. This was one of the key ones. They have not gotten into Odessa yet. They want to. I think what they really like to do, and if we don't settle it, they might very well attempt to go into here and take all of that. They don't have that now, so let's take it out. They don't have that now. And I think they're content to make peace without it. Uh, and also, I think they realize taking it would be tough. The Ukrainian to put up a big fight. It would cost them a lot more men and ammunition and money and everything else. And they got what they want. They have their land bridge to Crimea. They're going to want to keep that. So what they've done now is the cities that we're talking about are over here. My city, I consider it my city. Kharkiv is here. Now, they'd love to get Kharkiv. They have attempted, both in the last war and in this war, everything they could to take Kharkiv. They had it for a short while, and the militia in Kharkiv drove them out. And they have successfully resisted them. I don't know how. The city is half. I'll get you some pictures of it tomorrow. I'll see if I can get somebody on the phone there. I know the deputy mayor quite well, and I knew the mayor really well. The mayor was. I developed a emergency management. First of all, I developed a policing program for him, and he and the deputy mayor were like they were very close. The deputy mayor was his alter ego. Now he was shot and wounded very seriously by the Russians in 14. Lost the use of both of his legs. When I knew him, he was in a wheelchair. Mayor Kearns, and he died before. I think he died right before this started. But the people who felt double crossed by Putin in 14 just will not give in to him, and it almost doesn't seem worth the trouble. But now that he's moving up and taking, and I should really show you a little more accurately where Volodar is. Volodar is really. See if I can. Is that Pohorsk? Pohorsk. It's right here. There's Volodar, right there. So disregard that. It's right there. And the other cities move in that direction. They're trying to go after it. So I'm afraid that they're aiming. If this keeps going on, they're aiming for Kharkiv again. And now, why? Now, but beyond my emotional attachment to Kharkiv, it's the second richest city in Ukraine. With the destruction to it and to Kyiv, it's hard to know. It may, even though it's lost a lot, it may have lost less than Kyiv or not. I don't know the answer to that. But it is a tremendously valuable part of Ukraine, and particularly since their hearts were won back. They were originally Ukrainians that favored Russia. So before Putin invaded in 14, half of Ukraine favored Russia and half of Ukraine favored the West, roughly. You did an election, you'd come out like one of our elections, 48-48. And it was a two points that would divide them, and it would depend on who knows what, cheating. It might have depended on turnout. It might have depended on whim or a particular thing that happened. Now the country, taking out, of course, the area in here, this area which is controlled by the Russians. The rest of the country is, even though parts of this country, like you could go up to here, and these were Russian oriented Ukrainians or Russians, ethnic Russians, or like the mayor of Kyiv, half Russian and half Ukrainian, but a Ukrainian patriot. The sentiment for Russia was much stronger. Putin wiped that out by being the monster that he is. But the reality is that he's got very, very secure control of that area in here. This he's not given up. This is his bridge. Now, would he give up some of the places that Ukraine fought very hard for on the periphery, like the one that he just took? Would he give up? I've got to look at it again to pronounce it correctly. It is a very, very difficult city to pronounce unless you know Ukrainian, and I don't, except a few little words here and there. Vuhledar. He might give Vuhledar back. That might be the reason he took it. And that's the reason he's engaging in what he's doing. He's doing what happens a lot when you're moving toward an armistice or a peace treaty or a ceasefire. He's trying to get as much territory under his control as he can, and he's and I don't know if this was a good idea or a bad idea because it had no real tactical advantage. A month or so ago, Ukraine moved into Russia and took a small piece of territory. If you want to look, I'll show you. It's right here. Kursk, not that big, but that area there. Now, Putin had no reaction to it. He didn't go defend it. He didn't go take it back. He let him have it. I think he liked the idea that they spread their forces out because what he wants to do is keep what he's got and add a little more for trading purposes. And he knows he's going to get that back. I don't know if he's even going to care. It's not worth much. So I don't know if it was sensible for Zelensky, who I have no regard for at all. I don't know if it was sensible for him to disperse his forces when his real objective is to try to marginalize what he's got. I do think that Putin will give something back, but they're not going to get Russia out of Ukraine or what they regard as Ukraine, and he regards as Russia. Now, that's absolutely true. He may be fooling himself, but he's got an argument for it. He's got a historical argument for it. I disagree with it, but it's not insane. And you take Crimea. Crimea is the one place that would have voted for Putin to take over. That's really Russian. That was also the home of their nuclear fleet when it was the Soviet Union. Remember, Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. If I am correct, Khrushchev was a Ukrainian, was a Russian, but he came from Ukraine. Now, he is the one who gave them this area here. He gave them the area down in the south because it was his old country. The Russians never, I mean, a lot of Russians disapproved of that as well. Not just Putin. That was a sort of a sore subject because Crimea is not just ethnically Russian. A lot of this portion it's loyal to Russia. So all Biden is doing now is getting people killed with no prospect of any kind of victory in terms of expelling Russia from Ukraine. The handwriting is on the wall. This is going to be a negotiation and a trade, territory for territory, and Putin's going to want to keep a lot of what he won. You're not going to be as generous as the Israelis were when they gave a lot back after they had taken it during the 7-Day War. I thought they were way too generous, by the way. But in any event, that's a long time ago. So the debate, we're still affected by the debate, right? And I would like to I can show you a little piece here because it relates back, and sometimes things that you say come back to haunt you, don't they? So the thing that made Walz famous, with a lot of Democrats now saying she should have picked Shapiro, and he would have at least held his own against Vance. I don't know if that's true or not. I've never seen Shapiro debate. And I think Vance would have accomplished what he wanted to accomplish, no matter who was there. Now, but the other guy might not have lost. I mean, there are two things that happen. I mean, you win at a debate, and the other guy could win the debate too. I mean, particularly a vice presidential debate. They both have to come out where they're not hurting the ticket. Now, there was an argument that Vance might have been hurting the ticket because unfairly and because of the press, he had the highest negative quotient of any of the four candidates. Now, you don't want that. You don't want your vice president. You want your vice president at least to be, at least even. And I don't know if that negative was real or produced by the left-wing prejudiced press and their polls where they sample 25% Republicans, even though it's 36% Republicans. And I think some of the polls for Harris at the beginning were fixed in order to make her look like she had a big bump. And I think now you're starting to see real polls. And in many ways, I'm not going to say that Trump is romping, but he's got many, many more paths to victory than she does. So let's listen to how he became famous, because when he called Vance and Trump weird, that somehow really appealed to Carville and all these other jackasses. And nobody bothered to look at this guy's record or really take a good look at him. He really does look like a silly jackass. But let's listen to him.
It isn't much else. Don't give them the power. Look, are they a threat to democracy? Yes. These guys are just weird. That's who they are. So it isn't much else. Don't give them the power. Look, are they a threat to democracy? Yes. Are they going to take our rights away? Yes. Are they going to put people's lives in danger? Yes. Are they going to endanger the planet by not dealing with climate change? Yes. They're going to do all that. But don't lift these guys up like they're sometimes heroes. Everybody in this room knows, I know it as a teacher, a bully has no self-confidence. A bully has no strength. They have nothing. The fascists depend on fear. The fascists depend on us going back. But we're not afraid of weird people. We're a little bit creeped out, but we're not afraid. But look, and then as you...
Now, why don't we listen to him under pressure, nervous wreck, like a child, and listen to what he says.
Shooters. I've become friends with school 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 shooters.
So who's the weird one? That's not weird. How about the other things that he said? Do we have some of those? I mean, I can just repeat them. I don't. We've already made fun of him quite a bit, but.
Shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is
talking about cities and where it's at, the number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues, making sure folks have health care and all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns. And there are things that you can do about it. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns. And there are things.
I want to freeze this.
Sometimes it's just the This is of course the point that those of us who have a sensible, realistic position on guns find amazing with the left. I think they really believe the gun can shoot you by itself. After all, that's Alec Baldwin's defense. Alec Baldwin says, I didn't shoot her. I understand if he wants to say I didn't mean to shoot her, but he said I didn't shoot her. I didn't pull the trigger. He's a lefty. I mean, this guy says, could you quote that, Ted? What did he just say? Sometimes it's just the gun.
Sometimes it's just
It is
gun.
forever just the gun, except in the case of Alec Baldwin. One time in a million years, one time. Somebody has to, hey, Tampon, somebody's got to put a stupid face up. I want to talk to him. Hey, Tampon, somebody's got to pull the trigger. You get it, you commie? Huh? You get it? I don't even know why the communists recruited him. He's such a jackass. Usually the Chinese are smarter. I mean, like Fang Fang was a lot smarter. I mean, she was banging, what's his name? And right?
Right.
Getting a lot of information, I'm sure. How about,
He
how
wasn't
about
that
the
smart.
gun?
He wasn't that smart.
Who, Fang Fang? No, Fang Fang.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I thought you got Swalwell.
Well, I assume, I guess to outsmart Falwell will not take it. Yeah, they tried to do that to me and Mike Hess.
They can't get guys like you, Mayor.
I know. We threw out of the car. They planted one on us when we were in Beijing on Mike and I, and she's complimenting us, and Mike is asking. He was my partner at the time, and we were there, part of our security business, and we were gonna have. I can't remember if it was before or after my meeting with the mayor of Beijing. I think it was before, and we're asking her where she came from. Like she's sitting in the car. She's going to be our guide. We're going to go to the old city for while we're waiting to meet with the mayor. That was it, right? So we were jet lagged, and we said we were going to go rest, and she wanted to come with us. The minute she said that, Mike looks at me. I look at Mike. I stop the car, and I go talk to John Houvain, the head of my security. I say, "Get her there. I'm going to tell you exactly how to get her the hell out of here." And she is on a spy. I'll eat my hat. She's beautiful. And she's absolutely beautiful. And she could be with us for the whole trip. That's what they do. Now, you got to be a jerk not to know that. You got to be a Hunter Biden who gave his laptop to one of them. Or you got to be a Swalwell who is a totally a person without any principles, a person without any honor, a person without any dignity, a liar, a creep. This guy, if you still see his face on the screen, I don't know. But this guy, if you just look at him really carefully, that's the reason that guy right there is probably, I'll say probably because my basis for this is he won't answer the questions. He is one of the reasons why we have so many damn Marxists running around with our school children. Because I believe that way back when he was getting out of school, they fingered him. They paid for him to go to China. Harvard did. They brainwashed him, and then he went back 30 times, and he taught there, and he brought American children with him. Now, the Chinese Communist government is not going to let you come back 30 times unless you are teaching what they want you to teach. And they very much want you to bring children with them so you can brainwash them. And as he pointed out, very sketchy, and they never questioned them because these reporters don't care about the best interests of the United States. They just care about defeating Trump because Trump has their number. Trump points at them and says they are very, very dangerous to our democracy. And they are. Remember, these are people who covered up the hard drive. They are dangerous to our democracy. They helped to fix the 2020 election. I'm not even talking about counting the vote, right? I'm talking about covering up the hard drive. They did it. They did it in order to elect Biden and defeat Trump. They do a lot of things in order to elect Biden and defeat Trump. Lie, cheat, cover things up. So no way he goes to China 30 times. No way like he really screwed up the Tiananmen Square answer earlier in the debate. He has maintained for quite some time that he was in China during Tiananmen Square when the Chinese slaughtered innocent people. You would not forget whether you were or not in China during Tiananmen Square. If you were in New York on September 11th, you'd remember you were in New York on September 11th. The only person who would lie, for example, about being there the day after September 11th is someone like Joe Biden, who did. Joe Biden lied about being in New York the day after September 11th. I knew he wasn't there because I knew everybody that was in the city that day because there weren't very many. And we weren't letting any senators or congressmen come in except, of course, our own. And then there was a visit, people from Congress. He wasn't with them. I've known him for 35 years. So I knew he was lying about that. But you wouldn't forget he was doing that to bolster himself, to make himself important, like lying about his rank and lying about being in combat and lying about everything in the world. It turns out he wasn't there. But if you were there or were there shortly after Tiananmen Square, and you know that this government slaughters its own people, why the hell do you
Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of
You're getting married on the day of Tiananmen Square so you can remember it. Who wants to get married on the day of...
You said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring.
When China slaughtered so many people at Tiananmen Square. Play it.
You said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything. Many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID, and I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to
do the best you can for your community, and then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the
No,
discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Governor.
A jackass.
Democracy protests went in. And from that,
I must say, there are so many lies in that, it's amazing. First of all, what you would have learned from the democracy protest is that China is the most repressive government in the world, that it kills its own people more than any other government, that it's not a country you want to return to over and over again with a bunch of students. Donald Trump's going to China or not going to China is certainly not going to convince him that he should allow China to impose massive tariffs on us and not respond with tariffs to defend us. In fact, the best answer to jerk off about that is that the tariffs that Trump put in place, the Biden-Harris administration kept jerko. They kept them. Now, it could be they didn't know they had them. I mean, you never know with them. If they paid attention, he could have been at the beach and she could have been out raising money like they were for the hurricane. But here's the reality. He didn't go there with basketball teams, and he went there to teach. He was under the auspices. First of all, he leaves out the fact that Harvard recruited him to go to China, which is a big red flag immediately. And I mean red, not Republican red. I mean communist red. Harvard recruited him and paid for it. And during that time, China was very aggressive in grooming people in America to take up their cause. If it weren't teaching, it was in public relations or in politics. So they picked him as a guy who could spread their propaganda. And the best answer to that is they brought him back 30 times. You know, if he wasn't doing what they wanted, they wouldn't bring him back. Now, as far as I know, China financed his business like they did with the Bidens. Those two businesses that he talked about, those were businesses to take people to China. I believe they were paid for by the Red Chinese Communist government. I mean, that wouldn't be so unusual if we elected a president who took 30, 40 million from Red China and got half of it, according to his son. See, he left that out. Those businesses were businesses for the purpose of bringing young people to China, funded by the Chinese government. What they were paying for was brainwashing and grooming. That's what they were paying for. And now it turns out, according to his staff, that he actually wasn't there 30 times, like he said 1,000 times. He was actually there 17 times. Now, I don't really know if he was there 30 or 17 times. If he was there more than 3 or 4 times, they weren't going to let him come back unless he was teaching their curriculum, communism. And he was teaching under the auspices, I think it was, of the University of Shanghai or Hong Kong, or maybe both. He has been asked no questions about this, which is outrageous. He should be asked who paid for the first trip. He should give the specific program so we can see if any people in those programs have been prosecuted as spies. People at Harvard have been prosecuted as Chinese spies. Then we should know who funded his businesses, who funded the trips, how much of it came from China. Now, if it comes from China, it's coming from the government. Everything is under the government. And a guy like this is not going to be allowed back and forth like that without the government being right on top of it. And but it is important to know who funded it, who funded the businesses, who funded the trips. And then what was the curriculum? You taught there for 15 times, 17 times, 30 times. What were you teaching? Teaching the American Constitution? I doubt it. Or were you teaching the kind of shit that you say in the United States, that China's a wonderful place? You did say that. You said your best vacation was in China. That's hard to believe after Tiananmen Square that you actually thought your best vacation was in China. It was cracking down on democracy. Doesn't ring the right bell, tampon. It just doesn't. How about the one man's socialism is another man's neighborliness? That sounds like propaganda, doesn't it? Like Chinese propaganda. Sounds like you're sold. They got you. Boom. Like the Manchurian Candidate, like they did to Frank Sinatra. That was the North Koreans who did it. Maybe we'll show you excerpts from that. Actually, a couple of the things you've said come right out of it. That stuff about they're very nice people. That's one of the things they got him to constantly say, that you're very, very nice people. They brought him back here to run for president, but they brainwashed him. Honeymoon there? Who the hell goes to Red China on their honeymoon? Or thinks they're going to remember their wedding date by getting married on the day of Tiananmen Square, because they'll remember the date of Tiananmen Square better than they will their wedding? Did you remember the date of Tiananmen Square? Any of you? Don't you have to look it up? Remember the date of your wedding? I hope. You better. So, how can I say if he's a communist or not? I can't. All I can tell you is there are dramatically pressing questions that would be asked normally of any candidate for president. And that would be asked of him for a security clearance. And if he didn't answer them, he wouldn't get it. This guy shouldn't get a security clearance until this is cleared up. But he's not asked a question about it. Don't you get it that you're being set up again? Another cover up. One after the other after the other. Now we're going to turn to the other guy. Oh, before we do that, let's go to Hurricane Helene. What is and express again our feelings of support and condolences, of course, to the families and to the people in the southeastern part of our country. The epicenter being in. I don't know, Ted. Yeah, I mean they got hit the worst, but it did affect Florida and Georgia and South Carolina and North Carolina, as far up as Tennessee and Kentucky. I see when Biden went there, he went to South Carolina rather than North Carolina. Lindsey Graham and Governor McMaster were with him. And it is interesting. It was a week late and many dollars short. And he's angry at Trump for criticizing him. Well, then he should have got his ass off the beach the day before the hurricane. I mean, up until now, up until this year, even he used to have a briefing before a hurricane, which Trump and Pence did religiously. They would, and I know that because I would when I was mayor. If there was a hurricane coming, the head of my emergency management center, whether it was Richie or Jerry, they'd set up a briefing for the mayor. I mean, we had briefings for hurricanes that didn't hit us. We had briefings for hurricanes that did it. We had briefings for terrible snowstorms. We had briefings for snowstorms that were supposed to be terrible and weren't. I returned from the second inauguration of George Bush and didn't go to the inaugural ball, to the consternation of my then wife, because there was a hurricane coming. not a hurricane, a snowfall coming the next day that was alleged to be very, very big. Turned out there was, but it wasn't that big. But I wouldn't miss a snowfall in New York. I wanted to be on the air comforting my people. I wanted them to know that somebody was in charge, that if they had problems, they could reach me, call me. The president has to be sure that these are very, very intricate connections that go on. You can't manage a hurricane or a massive snowfall from the beach. He should be thrown out of office for doing that. I mean, that's negligence of the worst kind. And then the one who wants to be president, she doesn't want to interrupt her raising money or having fun in California or doing whatever the hell she does. So they didn't respond to this until 4 days into it. People had to feel they had no president. I mean, Bush didn't do anything like that, and he got ripped apart. He landed in one little place and had a press conference in South Carolina. The epicenter was really North Carolina. And he claims he flew over the rest. Remember when Bush flew over? What they did to him? Well, of course you should fly over. You can't go look at all of it. But where's the similarity of treatment? This was a terrible response. And I don't know, Kemp, I don't trust Kemp as far as you can throw him about, he did a great job. The people in North Carolina are saying they're getting nothing. They're getting nothing. Nothing is working, which means both their state government and their federal government are failing them. And I haven't seen Cooper. The only one I've really seen deeply involved in this is DeSantis. And he has, beyond any doubt, he's got the best emergency management system of all of them put together. Now, in fairness, it was built by Jeb Bush, but improved by Rick Scott and by him, and utilized by him. DeSantis didn't go to the beach. DeSantis was on television about this 2 days, there's fat face, 2 days before, that's not DeSantis, that's Kemp. 2 days before the hurricane hit, maybe 3. It hit on Thursday night. Ted and I, you might remember if you watch us, we're out on the Atlantic Ocean seeing what kind of impact it had. It had pretty good impact, but not a damaging one here. Big wind, waves. By the time we were out there, DeSantis had been on the air 2 days before that, at least. So was on the air warning people was 2 days before. That would be 6 days before Biden showed up on television or ended up at a place where you could really manage. And actually, even just the pictures of him on the beach, while people are dying, while his citizens are dying, is disgraceful. But no accountability. None. As if that's the normal thing. A president goes on the beach while his country is being ripped apart by a natural disaster. And his vice president, who wants to be president, is making sure she can get her hands on, perverted Hollywood money, where I don't know, they reduced the penalties for pedophilia again in California. So I thought Trump went easy on him, frankly. And I think Kemp is just, well, I don't know how good job he's doing. I've heard complaints from Georgia. I've heard them on television. Heard a lot of complaints from Georgia that they're not getting any help.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
North Carolina, we were hearing.
I don't think Georgia has a particularly good emergency management system. I mean, I've never heard anything good about it.
Yeah.
And North Carolina obviously is for crap. Baseball.
Baseball.
We got to spend a little time on baseball, but we'll take a short break and we'll come back. And then we'll spend a little time on baseball.
We're having the biggest sale ever on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save 60% on our Goose Down comforters, the best comforters ever. They go perfectly with our MyPillow bed sheets and duvet covers. Save 25% on our brand new kitchen towels. They're made with the same technology as our famous My Towels. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. Our seasonal flannel sheets are finally in. You save up to 50% and they sell out fast every year, so order now. They're truly the best flannel sheets you'll ever sleep on. Or save up to 80% on all our clearance items. And this is where it gets even better. For a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use that promo code to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. And for a limited time, your order ships absolutely free.
This is Rudy Giuliani back with you on America's Mayor Live. So what you're looking at on the board there is the postseason picture. Let's run it down for you. The Tigers, Ted will now cheer, won in a wipeout, 2-0 against Houston. I remember that first game was fascinating, but I think once they won that first game, it was over. I mean, I think it took the heart out of Houston. They pretty much had come back and boom, they don't make it. Kansas City upset Baltimore. Baltimore had maybe the third best record in the American League, even though they came in second in the East, and maybe like the fifth best record in baseball. They had just beaten the Yankees about a week ago, 2 out of 3. And I don't know what the season series is between them. I'll take a look. Got to be pretty even. And they are clearly the second best team in the American League. So that you never know how this all works out because these teams like Detroit's very hot. They can't seem to lose. This was going on at the end of the season. I mean, they were pretty much out of it, and the last 3 weeks really, they put on a surge. I don't know how many they've lost, if any, in the last 3 weeks. They just seem to have won and got themselves into the wild card. And were they the last wild card, Ted?
Yeah.
So now they're going to play the Indians. Which, I mean, Ted and I would like it if they played the Yankees, but for their purposes, it's better. I mean, the Yankees have to be tougher than Cleveland. So there's a good chance they'll get to the third round against Cleveland, who also have a pretty good record, by the way. They may actually have the second best record in the American League. I'd have to go look. And Kansas City should be a break for the Yankees as opposed to Baltimore. But you never know, right? Look, they beat Baltimore 2-0. They got to be hot like Detroit. Then you also have the issue, what does the rest do to you? Very often, the team that rests loses the first game. This is a 5-game series. You lose one game, it's not like a 7-game series where it doesn't matter as much. So the Yankees are going to have to make sure they're battle ready because Kansas City is. Same thing with Cleveland and Detroit. Detroit is hot as hell, and Cleveland has had the week off. So in their case, a very, very big test is going to be who wins the first game. If Detroit's going to win this, they're going to win the first game. So then we go, I'm going to get you to the game that's going on last. Then we go to the National League, where the team with the best record in baseball, the Los Angeles Dodgers, of course, had a bye. And they are going to play the San Diego Padres, who also won their series 2-0 against Atlanta. And And then we've got the only series that was tied. It gets down to a rubber game. The Mets, right, and the Milwaukee Brewers.
Like right now, it's 2-0.
Who?
Brewers are up on the Mets 2-0 in the eighth.
What inning? Too bad. I mean, you have no idea of what the excitement of a Subway Series is. Last time we had one was 2000, right? And the Yankees won 4-2. And both sets of fans had their heart in the mouth for this reason. And George Steinbrenner was a nervous wreck. And I'll tell you why. He said, in all the time the Mets have been in baseball, which is, I think, 1960 is when they came in. So that was 40 years. The Mets had been to the World Series a couple of times, 2 or 3 times, right? They won 1, 2. They won 2 out of 3. The Yankees had been to the World Series, more, but they never went to the World Series together in 40 years. They said it might be another 40 years before we get to the World Series together. And whoever wins is going to be the best team in New York. And he was very nervous. He said, we're a better team, but you can always win a 7-game series, which is true. You can always win a 7-game series. You can always win a 5-game series. It means it's the best team during this period of time. And with all the injuries, of course, that was the series where Clemens threw at Piazza and threw the bat at him. Are you going to show that one?
Some B-roll as you talk.
That was in the year 2000. Right? Do you know? I think he pitched a shutout in that game.
I'm 7-0.
That's Roger Clemens. Roger Clemens was a mediocre pitcher when he came to the Yankees. He had won the Cy Young Award with Toronto. And for the first year or so, he had a mediocre first year for the Yankees. And Steinbrenner and the Yankees were very disappointed. And Piazza owned him. And then he hits Piazza. He doesn't just hit him, he hits him in the head. And from then on, he won another Cy Young Award. I think he won 2 more. But you know what he had to do? He had to get back his brush ball. Look, I mean, this is part of baseball. What's the use of being a fastball pitcher if you don't throw at people? I mean, that's the idea of it. You brush them off the plate. You don't want to hit them. You want to move them out of their comfort zone. And I mean, it was definitely, I mean, the most notorious and most famous for that was Bob Gibson, who my client and friend Willie Mays told me was the only pitcher he really feared. He said, I think that man wanted to hurt me. He said, the rest I understood. I liked the inside corner. I wanted to take more of the plate. They wanted me back. I wanted to take it. They wanted me back. At one time, he said he had the most hit. He was either for the season or as a record, he had the most hits in being hit by a pitch. And he said, I never fought. I represented him in a case, and we were driving down to Atlantic City where the case was, and there had been a big fight the night before between 2 teams. I've forgotten who they were, but it was like on all the news. And he said, these kids are jerks. It's part of baseball. They always expect, if I hit a home run, or sometimes even if I didn't, because I was theoretically the best player, I knew they were going to try to hit me. Sometimes I'd even go up to the catcher and I said, don't tell him not to hurt me, all right? The only guy I really thought was mean, because you kind of feel like he was going for your head, was Gibson. Now, I don't think that Clemens threw at Piazza's head. I think the ball got away, but it did create a lot of bad blood. And then in the World Series, when Clemens hit him again, and I think he hit him right. And then he threw the bat at him. The bat split in half. Like when he swung, the bat came flying out toward Clemens, and Clemens threw the bat away, and it looked like, or maybe he did, that he was throwing it at Piazza, but he wasn't thrown out of the game, and he went on to win that game, and the Yankees went on to win that series 4-1, I think, which is a shame because it broke up their consecutive World Series game winning streak. After the Yankees went down in 96, 2 games to the Braves, they won the next 4 games. They won the next series they were in by 4, and the one after. So they'd won 12 in a row. And then they beat the Mets twice. And then the Mets beat them. 1 game. Broke up their streak. So we'll have to see what happens. If you go on the strength of the teams, you're going to have to say New York and Cleveland are the 2 best left in the American League, and LA and Philadelphia are the 2. Yeah, and Philadelphia are the 2 left in the National League. And the Dodgers, of course, have that guys like Team Olin, Ohtani. He had a game the other day that was just totally ridiculous. I mean, it's 4 home runs, 4 home runs, 10 RBIs, 12 RBIs. It's ridiculous. 12 RBIs. I mean, you get 12 runs for your team, they rarely will lose. Well, we got to talk a little bit before we go, and we'll go very shortly. But we got to talk about the new symbol of masculinity, because I'm very upset, Ted, that we're left out of it. Because I don't think we fit in this symbol. I do not think that you, for example, I can't judge myself. I do not think you look like Doug Emhoff. You do not remind me of Doug Emhoff. Well, no, it isn't. Not according to Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood. Look at her with. I mean, it's just like another goofball. Where do they find these people? But don't give me this masculinity thing. This guy is not John Wayne. I'm gonna get his daughter on.
An interesting part of how people have talked about your role here is how your role has reshaped the perception of masculinity. And I'm not sure you planned on that, but you are an incredibly supportive spouse. Has that been an evolution for you? And do you think that's part of the role you might play as first gentleman?
It's funny, I've started to think a lot about this. I've always been like this. My dad was like this. And to me, it's the right thing to do.
As first gentleman.
It's funny.
Supportive spouse. Has that been an evolution for you? And do you think that's part of the role you might play as first gentleman? But you are an incredibly supportive spouse. Has that been an perception of masculinity? And I'm not sure you planned on that, but you are an incredibly supportive spouse.
I think maybe they pushed this guy a little too much, and that's why it all came crashing down. After all, this did not come out 4 years ago when she was running for vice president. And I think it all had happened before. He had knocked up the nanny back about 2010 or 2012. And it had, and she had been very bitter about the fact that she claims that he caused her miscarriage. I don't know exactly how he could have caused a miscarriage, but that's what she says. But I mean, the fact that you knocked up your daughter's nanny is, I don't know, that makes you a perception of a new perception, reshape the perception of masculinity. So in order to reshape the new masculinity, is you knock up your nanny, Ted? Cheat on your wife and knock up your nanny? So I
guess so.
Your kid says, "Oh, Daddy, I'm going to have a half sister or a half brother with the nanny."
Yeah.
And then you cause her miscarriage. I don't know. Could it have been an abortion? I wonder. They sure don't seem to mind. I mean, she's in a state that allows abortion until the moment of birth, and I don't know if they have the hangover period like Minnesota has. That was another big lie at the debate last night. or the night before. And Minnesota, as I showed last night on the map that I put out, is one of the 6 states with no restrictions on abortion at any time. Remember, under Roe against Wade, you had to have a doctor agree with you, and you had to have life of the mother at stake to have a 8 or 9 month abortion. After all, you're killing a child at 8 or 9 months. You can't get away from it. I mean, you can't play around with it. I mean, take the kid out at 8 months, he'll survive. Walsey signed a bill, even though he's lying. He says you're lying. He said that Vance was lying. He was lying. Vance actually paraphrased the statute exactly. And not only that, he can't walk away from it because it was passed under him. And he advocated for it. And he had a big ceremony signing it. And what it does is it takes away the protection that a baby that survives abortion was getting, which was you had to keep it alive. It changed it to all you have to do is provide comfort. And they did. They provided comfort, and 5 babies died. And then he stopped reporting. So what a bullshit artist. And of course, how dishonest of the 2 the O'Donnell and the other one, Brennan, who don't correct it. I mean, that was just straight. You had to at least do that research. They did a lot of research on Vance. I mean, there are all kinds of articles about how he advanced the least restrictive. Even that language is used, the least restrictive laws in the country with regard to abortion, which could easily slip over into killing babies, and did in 5 cases. So now this guy, they make him he reshaped the perception of masculinity and was a wife guy. He was a nanny guy, not a wife guy. Now, the new one that's come out that I heard a Democrat hack, a Democrat mouse, whatever you call it, talking head, say, oh gosh, I guess it's true, they haven't denied it, is that a year before he met Cackling Kamala, and how he can stand her laughing, I have no idea. Well, how she could stand his goofy grin, I have no idea. But in any event, just a year before, he was in Cannes, France, and he was there with a New York lawyer who apparently is described as very attractive. And 3 of her friends have reported to the Daily Mail that is now printed it and has documents to support what they're saying, because she reported it contemporaneously to her friends because she was so upset. They had finished dinner. They were a little drunk, I guess you want to say, and they were having trouble getting a cab. And she went over to the attendant, the person who was helping her, the way the Border Patrol helps people come into the country now. That's what they're trained for. And she tapped him on the shoulder. He got very, very jealous and smashed the hell out of her, to the extent that he flipped her body around. She hit him back, and then he forced his way into the cab with her. That's the new symbol of masculinity. So the new symbol of masculinity now, Ted, is you're going to have to knock up a nanny, and you're going to have to slap the hell out of a woman you're dating, and then you can be a Doug Emhoff. Are you surprised? I'm not surprised.
No, not surprised. You think
they're just evil people?
Yeah,
they're like evil people.
The
guy's from Hollywood. He's a Hollywood creep.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. She
has no values or principles. She lies constantly. She's changed her. You can't change your position on 22 things. You can do 2 or 3.
I think
22.
Is there a chance it's falling apart? There's a chance that Trump wins this thing in a landslide. Well, with the cheating, probably not a landslide, right? But he really could win a lot of the. I mean, in a fair election, Mayor, I see a 1984
how about
type
this?
landslide.
He paid $18,000 to the nanny to shut up. with a non-disclosure agreement. Aren't they trying to put Trump in jail for that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
So why doesn't he go to jail?
and this woman, by the way, he knocked her up, right? She had a miscarriage, is what they say. Is that true?
She had a miscarriage, and he paid her to shut up.
Wow.
And
That's exactly
and this happened. This happened.
yeah.
The one with Trump, it didn't happen. I'm telling you, it didn't happen. Everything about that case is totally ridiculous. I mean, any sophisticated person would realize it didn't happen. First of all, she can't give a date, a year that it happened, and right away, super investigator Giuliani figures that one out. She doesn't give a date because she's going to probably screw up giving a date because he travels so much. He'd probably be out of the country on the day she's trying to frame him. I mean, that's why she did it. Number two, I'm sorry, you do not sexually assault or rape a woman in one of the most crowded department stores in New York City. Not unless you're crazy. And he's not crazy. Otherwise, there'd be lots of incidents like that. You don't do that just once. If you're that crazy, then you do it in the subway, and you do it in the ballpark, and you do it in the. I mean, you might as well have been at Yankee Stadium. And he's at the time he was one of the most well-known people, as he is now, in New York. It wasn't as if he just became famous when he became president. In New York, he was one of the 4 or 5 most famous people. A heck of a lot more famous than me before I was mayor. I don't know if this happened before or after I was mayor. But there wasn't a time from 1984, 85 on that he wasn't in the newspapers every day, just about, or every other day, with his picture on magazines and features done about him. And certainly the people at that department store would know him because it was the middle of Manhattan, right next to the hotel that he owned. And also, I'll tell you another thing that you'd have to know about being in New York, and I wonder if they put on expert witnesses to this effect. But any famous person that goes in there is immediately surrounded by the special people who advise you on what to buy and what to do. And they used to do it to me when I was not really that well known, when I was a U.S. attorney. So what? He shook him off and then went and raped her. I mean, she was that beautiful, that compelling. I mean, I know he made a mistake when he said, everybody got all upset when he said, "Gee, I didn't. I'm sorry. I never touched her." Who would touch her? Should never have said that. That's not right. You can't say that. Although you can't think it, and you can realize it's highly unlikely. The other ones are even more unlikely, though. She can't give a day, date, year. It's one of the most crowded department stores in the city. He's extremely well known, and he picks an area that's about 2 feet to do it, where if she made the slightest sound, everybody could hear it or even see it. It's not true. It's just not true. It has every indicia of being false, except for the fact that they framed him with it. Now, the other guy actually did, and doesn't come out when she runs for vice president because they cover it up. Now it comes out when she's and they're hitting. I mean, this woman crucified Kavanaugh, crucified him based on what was obviously uncorroborated, contradicted testimony, inherently dishonest. And she said, "Well, you have to believe a woman." Well, she sure as hell didn't believe the woman who said that Joe Biden sexually assaulted her. Well, you just believe Democrat women. I mean, or if the Republican is the subject of the woman's complaint, you believe it, and if it's a Democrat, it's not true. I don't know. I don't know. So we got to finish up with Jack Smith. This is the height of election interference and absolute proof that all the indictments were setups in order to try to stop him from being president. First of all, you don't indict somebody 4 times in an election year unless you're trying to stop him from being president on charges that make no sense to anyone. Charges that nobody else has been charged like me with a crime for being a lawyer. I mean, it's ridiculous. Or Professor Eastman gave him a reasonable, supported interpretation of the Constitution, recently supported by a 110-page law review article. I think it was in the Georgetown Law Review. They supported Eastman's position, for which they now want to put him in jail for the rest of his natural life. It was an absolutely reasonable position that he took on the power of the state legislature and Congress with regard to the electoral vote. The electors, selection of the electors, which has been tossed out in Arizona or Georgia? In Georgia, should be tossed out in Arizona and in the federal courts as well, because there was nothing fraudulent about it. Just like there was nothing fraudulent about the Engemoron thing that the appellate division appears to have understood, that was a frame-up. But why the hell is Jack Smith issuing a report now to interfere with the election? There's no reason for that report now. The case is not going to go to trial tomorrow. You can put that report in 2 months from now. And it's completely untrue. He's got one thing in there apparently about me. I think I'm probably C1. And he says that I called and intimidated some lawyer for the Republican National Committee. First of all, I didn't intimidate anybody. The guy was fired because he was telling people that Trump was going to lose, and he's and not to donate any money to his defense fund. He's trying to get that money for the Republican National Committee. And I did tell the head of the Republican National Committee that she should fire him, but I didn't threaten him. I just did it. Because he was also defaming Jenner and me. But I didn't threaten him with anything. About the facts, this guy should be fired. Shouldn't be a lawyer for the Republican National Committee. I mean, we got enough of people against us. We're not going to have our own lawyers against us, right? So that's a reasonable position to take, which Jack Smith, who's probably one of the most despicable lawyers in the country, which is the reason he was selected. Remember, he's got a track record. The track record is to frame people, to build up these phony, exaggerated charges, somehow get them convicted, particularly in the District of Columbia, where any Republican would get convicted, and then not care if it gets reversed on appeal, which is what happened. And not only that, reversed on appeal because of his own unethical conduct. Now, Garland has to pick somebody to prosecute Trump. You pick somebody with a good record, right? A record of honesty and integrity. This is a guy who has one of the more outstanding records for lack of integrity in an opinion of the United States Supreme Court that was 8-0. And you pick him. You pick a dishonorable, you pick a guy who has had a massive ethical breach in order to investigate the president of the United States. Tells me you want to screw him up. You want to screw up the president or the former president. Now, nobody pays attention to that, which is why Garland is a horrible attorney general. And they're investigating the Trump assassination attempt. Go figure that one out. Well, it's getting crazier and crazier. The article in the Daily Mail does have a tease in it saying there's more to come on the paragon of masculinity, who has now 3 strikes against him, right? Strike 1 is he knocked up his nanny. Strike 2 is he slapped the hell out of his girlfriend. And strike 3 is he paid for her silence, which, by the way, is completely legal, but not in the case of Trump, but in his case. So let's see what else. They say there's more to come. A guy like that this may be a problem. I mean, usually if you have this problem, It doesn't just happen 1 or 2 times. You slap women around. You slap women around. You got to be slapped around. My father used to tell me, a man who hits a woman isn't a man. He said, I would forgive you almost anything if you do that. You're not a man. He did it when he taught me to box. He told me, I don't want you to be a bully. I don't want you to ever start a fight. I don't want you to fight with somebody smaller than you. If you get into a fight and somebody attacks you, then I want you to win. And I'm going to show you how to win. But I don't want you to pick on anybody. And number 2, you touch a woman. At this point, I was probably about 8, 9 years old, and I used to spar with him. And my father was a boxer. And occasionally he would like just tap me, and I almost go down. And he said, if you touch a woman, you're going to have to deal with me. I'm like, okay, I won't touch a woman. And I've always had complete disdain for men who hit women. When I became mayor, I did a whole program to protect battered women that the city never had before. Nobody gives me credit for it. I'm a Republican, but it was behind closed doors, and changed all the rules as to how we deal with domestic violence, set up a shelter system. Joe Torre's Safe at Home contributed to that. I have very strong feelings about this. And I think it's a major problem. It is a major problem. It's a major problem, believe it or not, with the UN delegation. You can't believe the number of calls that the New York City Police Department has for these creep bums who are beating up their wives and daughters and then doing other things with their daughters. You talk about masculinity. You're not Emhoff, you slap that woman, you're not a man. What are you doing slapping a woman? Slap me, asshole. See what happens. I'm 80. And what are you, 50? I bet on me. Okay. Where did we find these people to ruin our country? God, a prayer tonight for our country, huh? Save us from these people. I know this was a test for us. Have we passed the test? I hope. A lot of people suffering as a result of these people. A lot of people died. So give us the wisdom and the strength to overcome it. And of course, pray for the people of Israel who are being double-crossed by the Biden regime. People of Ukraine who are in an endless war, which now appears to be going on just for the purpose of 2 crooked regimes whacking up money. There's no road to victory here that Biden will allow. There is a road toward grabbing some of that $8 billion that he just turned over. Mayorkas didn't have enough money, doesn't have enough money to help these states. How about we take a couple of billion away from what we're giving Ukraine and give it to North Carolina? What do you think? All that's going to happen in Ukraine is they're going to die for nothing. And God bless America. We'll see you tomorrow. Bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze,